Hello everybody. Last week and the week before we looked at applying materials to primitives. This week we're actually going to just cover both of those subjects in one video. So initially I'm going to show you how to apply colors to individual primitives, and also then we're going to move on to applying images with Uvw mapping to be able to move the image around on the surface of an object. First things first, I'm going to move. You'll notice up here we've got this little option here. Now these options show you how objects are being displayed in the window. So here it says textured. I've got textured on, textured off. Might be a habit to just turn textured on so you can see them all the time. I've got textured on. I'm now going to create three objects. I'm going to create a cube in the middle, a cylinder, and a cone. Now any objects, any primitives that you create in the space are assigned a default material. Now you'll see the default material if you look at the attribute editor at the side here. If you remember the P cube, it allows us to decide the size of an object. The polycube allows us to decide the width and height and depth of an object. So I said a cube, so I'm going to make this 6 by 6 by 6. This is a reminder. I'm going to make this cylinder, go to polycylinder. Height, I'm going to make that 6, so it's the same height. 6, so it's the same height as the cube. Just going to move them around a bit, tidy my environment up. So, got that there. Okay, so side by side, move it around, zoom in a bit. So you'll notice that each of these objects is already assigned a default material. And this is the kind of mid-grey that you can see here. And you'll see this if you click on any object, you look at the attribute editor, and the last tab on the right is always the material. So you can see sample there, that's the grey, there's the mid-grey colour. If I was to ever change that material, it would change any object in the scene that has Lambert 1 applied to it. Now this is the same for any colour that you create, because you're essentially creating a material and objects as two separate things. We're going to change the colours of each of these. I've got my textures on there just in case. And this first one, I'm going to create red, blue, green, RGB. So red, cylinder, go to right click on here. It's the same right click and holding the right click down as you would do if you were selecting faces, edges, objects, and so on. I'm going to go down here. You can see assign new material, assign favorite material, assign existing material. If you want to, you could jump straight into assigning Blinn, Lambert, Phong here. But we're going to go through, just so we know, we're going to assign a new material from scratch so we can understand the process. So assign new material here. It brings up this sub-menu here. We can see what type of material we want to actually apply. In this case, I'm going to apply a Blinn. Now the Blinn for this, I'm going to change red. So I click on the colour wheel, I pick a red colour here, and I'm quite happy with that, so I can just click away. So we've now got a red. Now you'll notice here it still says Blinn 5. So I'm going to click on this tab here, I'm going to rename it. So you could rename it whatever you want. In this case I'm just going to call it red. It did say red 1 because I've already created another object called red, probably. So it could be red, whatever you want to call it. It could be red if you were applying it to the jet engines on something. You could say jet thruster. So that's now the jet thruster. Or if I want to go this one, red, green, blue. So I'm going to apply this as green. Right click, assign new material. I'm going to put a Phong. I'll click on the color wheel. We go green. Darken the green down a bit. It's a bit too bright. There, we've created the Phong. I'm going to call that green. away, and this one's going to be blue. So again, right click, but in this case we're actually going to, we know what a Lambert is, a fong, so we're not going to go through the process, we just want to go to, I'm going to create a fong. So it automatically opens this attribute editor. You can click on colour, and I'm going to pick the blue. Again, I'm going to tweak the blue like this, and then click away. But you notice I've forgotten to give it a name, so I'll give it Fong 2. Change that to blue. Spell it right. Right, so now we've got red, green, blue on these primitives. If I was to create a torus at the front here, like that, now I could go through the whole process of applying new material, but say for example if I wanted to just use that blue I already have, or that green, or that red, and I'm going to pick the red for a minute, so right click, assign existing material, look for your red. Now we did rename it to jet thruster, so that's what it is, so jet thruster is the red, and click on that. If I create another cylinder here, I do the same thing again, right click, existing material, we called it blue, it's blue 1. It's the same color as that. If I wanted to, I could just easily go around, assign, and change the colors around, because they're in scene. Jet thruster. So anyway, I'm going to get rid of some of these. Pink, pink, so I'm going to go there, right click, change this to jet thruster, change this to green, and change this to blue. Red, green, and blue. Okay. Now, just to show you as well that these colours are actually stored, up in the top here, there's something called Hypershade. Hypershade is the editor for all the colours. Now, you could use the attribute editor for changing any of the colours, but the main area for doing things is up in this Hypershade editor. We're not going to be using too much of Hypershade because it can get complicated. But I'll just show you briefly where everything is stored. So when you create new materials, they're stored up here. So I'm going to click on that. This opens up Hypershade. It's much better if you have two screens, but you know, we've got blue, green, red. I'm going to change jet thruster to red, so I know what it's called. I'm going to give that and get rid of the numbers. So you can see this here. And you can also, if you want to see samples, you can change the shape that it actually shows you in here, that something looks like. And that one, glass fill, ocean splash. Let's show you default setting for those. It's quite fun. And we're not going to look at too much in here because, as you can see, it does get quite complicated around this area. So for the minute, we're just going to leave that aside. I'm going to close that. So just so you know that you have a library of materials and colors that you're creating, and they're going to appear in the Hypershade editor. That's the first part. We're going to go on to the second part now. So I'm going to delete each of these objects, and we're going to assign a image to an object. Now I'm going to follow through what we did the other day with the cereal box. So I'm going to create a cereal box, and we're going to apply the sugar bombs to it. So that's about okay. Cereal box size. I can tweak it later once I've applied the image. Now we still have, at the moment, red and blue and green here, existing colors, but I'm going to create a brand new one, which is a Lambert, and it's going to have an image attached to it. So first of all, make sure you've got the whole object selected, and then go assign new material, I'm going to pick Lambert sugar bomb. If you put any spaces in there, it'll automatically create an underscore for you. Now the sugar bomb is an image that we've got. I'm sitting on a desktop, so if you could apply any kind of images that you want. Now we've applied colour. What we're going to have a look at here, so there's a little checkerboard next to it. If we click on the checkerboard, it'll bring up this list, create render node. We'll talk about render nodes later, but for the minute we're adding a connection between the colour and the file. So the file is going to be the image, so we click on file, and it brings up this one, the attributes, and to be able to get the image in, we've got to click on this little yellow folder, and then we've got to find our image, which just happens to be on the desktop, Sugar Bombs 2, here it is. Click open, and it appears on here. If for some reason your image doesn't appear, just double check you've got your textured turned on at the top here. Okay. Right, we've got the image applied to the box, but it's not very well. It's not displayed very well. It's all over the place. Now the reason for this is that to an object, it doesn't know how to apply that material to the object. It doesn't know where the sides are, the top, the bottom, and all the different faces of the primitive. So what we have to do something called Uvw mapping. Uvw doesn't actually stand for anything, it's just Uvw XYZ. It sits next to the 3 letters. So what we're going to do, first of all, we're going to just have a look what would happen if we left the UV mapping as it stands. And at the top here we've got all these icons. We've got applying for applying things. So like spheres, cylinders, flat surfaces. This is kind of automatic, create UV coordinate system there. We're not even going to touch those yet. We're going to go straight into edit, the UV editor, and have a look what happens. Now you see the default for a UV editor is kind of this, particularly when you've got a cube, is this like six-sided shape, just like a dice. It doesn't know the size of the sides or the faces. It doesn't know where the faces are on the image. What we're going to do, first of all, we're going to do a UV map. Now I'm going to move this aside here, and we're going to click on this cube. Once we've got to make sure, first of all, as well, the whole object is selected. We'll make sure that's all selected there. Once we've done that, we click on the auto UV, click on that, and you'll see that each of the sides, each of the faces, is changed to the correct kind of proportions of the model. Makes it a lot easier to see. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to zoom out of this window. You can use all the tools and all the keys that we've used previously for using and moving objects around in 3D space. So I'm going to use the W key just to move everything out of the way. So we're out of there. Now the reason why this is still showing images is because this square here is repeated to infinity beyond that. So if you can imagine that we're looking at a copy of that in the next cube here, a copy of that on the next cube up there, and so on and so forth. So if I was to move that in the corner, you'd be able to see 4 different squares. Now I'm going to move this. Because we can see this on the front here, I'm going to zoom in on here. Now I'm just going to use, got a minute, I'm just going to use the scale tool to scale and move. So R key and the W key, put it somewhere in the middle. might notice a problem. It's not really a problem, but again, it's not just the orientation of up, down, left, right. It's also the orientation of the rotation. If we need to, we might need to hit the R key to rotate it around to make sure it's up the right way. Just be careful about making sure it's straight. So effectively this is like unfolding your cereal box, revealing all of the flat faces, and you can see it's like that in 3D. What I can also do now is if I select object mode, if I'm not happy and it looks a bit stretched, I can still scale the box in all the different directions to make it look like it isn't stretched at all, particularly on the ingredients side of things. I'm going to close the UV editor down. If I just check to see what the UV editor shows me for the cylinder, click on there, you'll see basically the top and bottom and all the sides. Now sometimes I'm not necessarily happy with the type of UV mapping that happens for some of them, so this is quite good for applying materials because we know the top, we know the sides. So if I was to select, say, faces, I'm going to select all of these faces here, I'm going to stretch them all out, just making sure it's in that window there. We've got a fairly even spread of each of the faces on that cylinder, which is quite good. That's without the UV editing. But sometimes you might have to make a choice. If I apply the UV editor, UV editing tools there, we end up with something like that. Now, with that we haven't lost it, just flattened it, the top and the bottom. So it doesn't always work. So you just have to use your own judgment. I'll go back, Control Z, go back to that. I'm happy with the form of UV editing in here. Sphere, I'll show you what a sphere looks like. There's the sphere, it's like top to bottom. So if I click a particular face, see where, you see the last one will be one of the triangles at the top here. So it is quite easy to make like a map of the world. It fits in that squish state there. We can apply a map. You can see where the join is. Look around, you can see the join between the two faces. And that's it. So, there you go.